Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's also the publisher of thebreaker.news, his website, thebreaker.ca. Welcome back to the show, Bob.
Thank you.
The people of Cowtown have put their foot down and have voted no to hosting the Winter Olympics. Is that a good decision on their part?
Yeah, the 2026 Winter Olympic bid was put to voters on November 13th, and 56% of them were against. And only 43% of them were for the Olympic bid. The $5.1 billion Olympic bid, which required about $3 billion in public money. I think this is the right decision based on the lack of information. The people of Calgary were given this chance to vote democratically, which is good, but they were given this chance before the bid book was finished and before some major details were decided, such as the site of the Olympic Village. Anyone who remembers the history of the Vancouver Olympics will remember how the Olympic Village in 2008 required a bailout from the city of Vancouver in order to keep construction happening, and then it needed to be refinanced when the Wall Street financier pulled out. And then after the games, the sales tanked, and it was put into receivership, not to come out until 2014 when the Aquilinis bought the remaining luxury condos for a tax loss. So the people of Calgary, I think, made the right decision. As much as, hey, I've covered 5 Olympic Games myself, and I see what it does for a city from a tourism standpoint. It makes your city the most famous city in the world for 2 weeks. You can't buy that, except you do buy it because of all the other costs involved, and the costs of an Olympics actually outweigh the benefits. And, of course, there is the lack of transparency that happens. There's the corruption of the IOC. The IOC right now is not a trusted governing body. The Olympic rings, as much as they're the most recognized brand in the world, they're not the most trusted brand in the world. You saw what happened with the Sochi doping scandal with the Russians and how the Russians really didn't get the discipline that the athletes even wanted them to get, that the athletes who do not dope, the athletes who want the rules to be respected, were very disappointed that the Russians did not get disciplined and removed from the International Olympic Committee or suspended entirely. So the International Olympic Committee right now needed Calgary more than Calgary needed the IOC. Of course, Calgary right now is still trying to dig itself out of the oil glut. The price is down and is still trying to get its oil out of Alberta by more means than it has already, by pipelines. And this was sold to the Calgary residents as a bit of a solution to some of the problems right now, but it would have created more problems, as we saw here in Vancouver on the way to 2010, what it did to Vancouver. It made Vancouver a more expensive city. It did help those in tourism and real estate, though. There's a lot of people that are laughing all the way to the bank because of the Olympics, but a lot of people didn't see any benefit whatsoever, just more costs. And we still don't know how much the Olympics cost because the Auditor General of British Columbia never did a final report. And, of course, all the interesting and juicy documents that I want to read, that a lot of people want to read, the Van Ock board minutes, the finances, procurement information, we can't see it until the year 2025. It's locked up at the city archives. So based on all that, all the question marks, the people of Calgary made the decision, and now the International Olympic Committee has a problem in its hands because Milan and Cortina d'Ampezzo, Italy, and Stockholm, Sweden are the only 2 bidders left. And those 2 cities are not exactly as enthusiastic as some in Calgary were. There's some questions about whether the governments in Sweden and Italy will write the check and will actually guarantee any cost overruns. The International Olympic Committee was really desperate for the Summer Olympics in 2024 and 2028. It took the bidders for 2024 and decided to give Paris and Los Angeles a choice of which one they wanted. And of course, Beijing gets the next Winter Olympics in 2022. There were only two cities that were going for 2022. The IOC right now is in trouble like it was in the late 70s, early 80s after Montreal, the Montreal debacle, when Los Angeles in 1984 was the only bidder, so they give to Los Angeles then. I think it's getting to that point where the IOC has to reorganize itself, become more transparent, and bring more money to the table and actually take up the risk, because it's running out of cities. Cities do not want to get involved in this spiraling game of debt. As much as it does build your brand, it also builds debt, and it builds controversy. Look at other cities around the world that have gone different ways. Look at Seattle. It didn't go for an Olympics. Well, it let its economy build around the city and to become a high-tech titan, and look where you got. You got Starbucks and Amazon and Microsoft, and the world's biggest companies are in Seattle. Well, that's because Seattle decided to get away from mega events, from World's Fairs like it did in the 60s and the 19th century, and let the economy happen, let innovation happen. Whereas British Columbia, we've had Expo 86, we've had the Vancouver 2010 Winter Olympics, and we've used those as catalysts for infrastructure. Well, the people of Calgary, who had the Olympics in 1988, decided not to have it again in 2026, and all it takes now is just a rubber stamp from Calgary City Council when it meets next week.
Doesn't the IOC have enough money itself to actually pay the cost of one of these games?
They do have about $1 billion in the bank, and the problem with the IOC, though, is that the Olympics have become an industry. The Olympics have become an industry for architects and engineers and construction companies that build sports venues or renovate sports venues. They've become an industry for major transportation infrastructure companies that build subways and train systems and airports. That's what the Olympics have become. This isn't just a sporting event. This is an event, a major industrial event that cities want to put their best foot forward, and there's this pressure on each city to do bigger and better and shinier and faster than the previous one. And there's politicians in every city and every host country that want to put their names on plaques and have photo ops and become and basically build empires. And let the money flow. It's become this behemoth that has gotten so far away from the pure sport that that's why the Olympics are now suffering. People, the Olympics still get big TV ratings, but they don't capture the attention the way they used to, because you can see a lot of Olympic athletes in World Cups and other tournaments and other events and competing mega events on a more regular basis. You can travel around the world and see them. The Olympics in their heyday were the only place you'd see these people once every 4 years. And now you can travel around the world and see them if you're so disposed, and you can see them on the internet any time of day. You can follow them on social media. There's the exposure's there, the media machine is there, and they're competing for attention. The Olympics, if they were to be held in Calgary in 2026, would have been an interesting one, because 2026 is also the year that FIFA's World Cup is coming to North America. And then 2 years later, Los Angeles has the Summer Olympics. You also have competition from the NFL, NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball. You've got European soccer. You've got a lot competing for the attention of sports fans and entertainment fans. You've got a lot competing for the pocketbooks of sponsors. And this is a very competitive atmosphere. The Olympics, again, don't monopolize like they used to. They're still powerful. They still get a lot of eyeballs, but not as much as before. Not as powerful a brand. It's not as trusted a brand. I think the IOC needs to go back to the drawing board and remake itself. And part of the remaking of the IOC needs to be that it has to be transparent. They don't like to think of themselves as a government, but they really are a government of sport, and they got to be democratic. They got to be open, they got to be transparent, and they got to put a lot less pressure on host cities, and the IOC's got to bring a lot more money to host cities in order to do it. In fact, if the IOC was to take all the money from all its corporate sponsors and come to a host city and say, hey, we will pay for everything. You just let us have use of your city for a couple of weeks. We'll pay for everything. We'll pay for, police, fire, ambulance. We'll pay for everything that they used to put pressure on cities to host, and pay for. If they were to pay the whole check, then I think it'd be a whole different conversation.
Well, isn't that what they did at the Los Angeles Olympics? I think back in '82, is they said if we can't get it sponsored by everybody, we're not doing it, and they turned a profit.
Well, the Los Angeles Organizing Committee went on a different business model. They did get government funding. There was public money spent, but it wasn't all on the shoulders of the public. They decided to look at the Olympic model and say, well, let's try to get it sponsored. Let's get as much sponsorship money as possible to pay for as much as possible and use venues that were left over from the 1932 Summer Olympics. Of course, Los Angeles held 1932 as well, and it had a lot of other venues that were built in the years since for a lot of other different uses, for professional sports, for instance, and for university sports. So Los Angeles had just an embarrassment of riches, a lot of sports venues being the metropolis it is, and was able to handle it all. But they also figured out that you have to go and sponsor it. You have to get the Disney Dazzle, the Hollywood Sparkle. That's what they did. They did everything right. They remade the Olympic movement and changed the way it is. But of course, since Los Angeles, you've had other cities take over and get into the spiral, and you've had political reasons as well. You had Putin in Russia decide to try to one-up China by making the Sochi Winter Olympics as big as a Summer Olympics, even bigger than the Beijing Summer Olympics. That was what he was trying to do, was trying to place Russia as this superpower to poke at the U.S. and poke at China. So the IOC really has to remake it and get back to business, down to the roots of it as sport, and maybe even choose 3 or 4 different venues for Winter and Summer Olympics and rotate them around, have a permanent rotation instead of going to new cities.
I was just going to mention that because the Vancouver Winter Games, although of course there are critics about the costs, everything that was built for that is still there, except for the speed skating oval, and I'm sure they could clear that out and use the recreation center there for a couple of weeks for Olympic events, and then move the recreational facilities back in there. Apart from that, Vancouver's all built and ready to go.
I don't think we'll see an Olympics come back here anytime soon because the city has built up since then. One of the spin-off effects was the attention that Vancouver gained in China, and of course we've seen all the investment from China into Vancouver, and the building, and with the building, the increase in population as well as the increase in congestion. When you have a Golden Olympics, you've got to think of security, you've got to think of transportation. That's the other aspect of it, that those other costs there. It cost $900 million for security in Vancouver. It was going to cost at least $500 million in Calgary. I don't know why they went with that lowball estimate for 2026 when it cost almost $1 billion in Vancouver for 2010. And of course, there's the transportation tie-ups when you have an Olympics. And because of that, there have been studies. There was a study in 2002 by some economists from the College of the Holy Cross in Salt Lake City that showed that, in fact, the economy was harmed by the Salt Lake 2002 Olympics. And there was evidence here in Vancouver that the economy during the Olympics was actually harmed because it changes the way people act as consumers. That when you bring a large infrastructure like that into town for a few weeks, there is a crowding out effect, where people that would normally visit the city or normally do business in the city at a certain time, they get out of the city, or they stop by, or they sit in front of their TV and they don't go to the grocery store like they normally do. And there were parts of Vancouver that were almost like ghost towns. There were downtown Vancouver parking lots that were offering major discounts on parking fees because people weren't going downtown in their cars to park at those parking lots. Of course, at certain parts of downtown, near Olympic venues, of course, there were other restaurants that were making off like gangbusters with all the business. But on an overall net basis, an Olympics during that period of time doesn't actually help the city's economy as a whole. And that's been proven time and again, that the economic benefit forecasts never come true, and the costs are much greater, and it's all about the spin-off after the games. And of course, we saw in Vancouver that, hey, if you're in a construction company or a real estate company, if you're in a tourist attraction, you've done pretty well since the 2010 Olympics. But of course, the rest of Vancouver, people are struggling to pay the rent and pay their mortgages. It's a different story. So it didn't benefit everyone.
Are so-called identity politics racist?
I think they are in many ways. If we're sectioning off and running political parties just on identities, on culture, on race, then we're building walls between us. Big tent political parties, whether they're conservative, NDP, or liberal, green, whatever flavor you are on the political spectrum, those are about multitudes of issues. But when you get the identity politics, whether it's on the right or on the left, if it's all about race and culture, then it is dividing us. It's causing walls, and we're seeing it in the United States, we're seeing it in Europe, we're seeing it here as well, where there's movements that are, you've seen the Black Lives Matter, and on the other side of the spectrum, you've seen people on the right trying to promote European culture and build political movements around that. It's negative because there's more to us than just the colors of our skins.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
MGX Minerals is revolutionizing the new energy economy with patented lithium extraction technology, replacing traditional solar evaporation using low-cost, low-energy nanofiltration. The first system of this paradigm shift technology is currently being commissioned. MGX Minerals trades on the CSE, symbol XMG, the OTCQB, symbol MGXMF, and Frankfurt, symbol 1MG. For more information, visit our website, mgxminerals.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, we know that gang violence in the greater Vancouver area is rampant. We're losing 4 or 5 people a day to the opioid crisis. And of course, that fentanyl is sold by gangs. Yet we hear that the program in Abbotsford, In It Together, which is designed to keep kids out of gangs, has run out of money. What is going on here when we have governments at all levels saying we're trying to keep kids out of gangs? We're trying to slow down this drug crisis, yet a program designed to counter all that runs out of dough.
It just shows the lack of holistic planning, that there needs to be a summit of all the ministers that are in charge of the various aspects, whether it's the law and order ministers like Farnworth and Eby, with the ministers involved in addiction like Darcy and Dix with health, social services, Shane Simpson. You got to get them all together in the same room with the mayors, with the councillors, with the local experts, and sit down and say, okay, what do we need to do here to fix this problem? Let's make a plan and connect everything. And programs like this to keep youth off the street and get them interested in other things, get them interested in sports and music and in arts are a benefit to society and need to be done. And we've also got to look at other aspects. One part of the equation that I never hear about is the parents. Are the parents of some of these gangsters too scared of the children that they've raised and failed to raise properly. What about the parents of those who are, developing youth, who could be youth at risk? Where are those parents? Are there parents, though, that are neglectful and abusive of children? Because those are the ones, of course, that need to be helped as soon as possible. But are there parents there who can afford the time, afford the money to pay more attention to their children? Maybe that some of these parents groups, there's the Wake Up Surrey group, which is something that's sprouted up in the last couple of years after some terrible incidents in Surrey. Maybe there's got to be some room for a parents group, a vigilante parents group, to get out there on weekends and to watch where their children are going, to go there to wherever they hang out, and just to remind the children who aren't children anymore, who may be teens and young adults, that they have parents that care, and parents that don't want them to wander down a criminal path and end up in coffins in the future, because that's where it's heading. Gang officers will tell you that some of these gangsters who had a promising upbringing, who go down the wrong path, by the time they're 30, they're on a path either to jail or to the cemetery, and that's got to be stopped. So I think that's the ultimate solution, is to get all the stakeholders together and look at programs like this, and don't just feed them funding for a short period of time and do the photo op. Look at a long-term plan. Look at a long-term plan, but also with key performance indicators to make sure that the money's going in the right place and you've got the right people involved. And set goals, set targets. And don't set goals and targets based on the 4-year election cycle. Do it quarter by quarter by quarter, and do it over a long period of time. There's got to be some way to do this, because this is a matter of life and death. And you've got to look at this from other aspects too, that maybe bring in judges, maybe bring in doctors, just bring in every expert that is imaginable, bring them together for a summit, get the best ideas out on the table, and if there's things that aren't working right now, cancel them, and if there's things that are working from other jurisdictions, import them. This has gone on for far too long. And the worst part of this is when you hear someone say that, we're in a big city now, it's a metropolitan area, and this is just the way big metropolitan areas are. If we allow this to be normalized, then we're going to lose our communities.
Well, what about programs? I think it might be New Brunswick that has just announced that they're going to supply hockey equipment to every kid that wants it. And any parent knows hockey's a pretty expensive sport, and any kid that gets into hockey, I've never heard really say, I really regret becoming involved in hockey. Boys and girls, it's such a great game to play. I love playing it.
Well, that's a great idea. I mean, that's the thing that they should be looking at, is all way down the spectrum. If you want a guitar, if you want guitar lessons, if you want to play hockey lessons, if you want basketball and shoes to join a basketball team, if you're in trouble, if you want addiction services, you want to get into rehab, it's just a phone call away. If everything was just a phone call away based on a means test to help those who need it to be part of the community, think of what we'd save in the long run in police costs, court costs, hospital costs. It would just be stunning. And think of the better communities we'd have. That should be part of the whole discussion too.
We'll have more with Bob Mackin right after this.
Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTC QB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Bob Mackin. Bob, Do you feel the whistleblowers in government need more protection, and do they get much protection right now?
Well, finally, BC has a whistleblower protection law that was brought in last May by the NDP, but it only covers government employees, doesn't cover every activity, though, which is a bit of a problem that was pinpointed in a new report by Caroline Boydell, who's a professor at Kwantlen Polytechnic University, a report that was done for the BC Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. It does applaud the NDP government for finally bringing BC into the world of whistleblower protection, but it's very critical because the law doesn't go far enough. It doesn't cover private sector actors, even though there is a section of the criminal code that does say that it is illegal for a private sector employer to prevent an employee from blowing the whistle. It isn't strong enough. It's not tested very often, and for those those employees who might want to blow the whistle on their boss, there still is a lot of fear, and we may be missing out on reports of corruption and wrongdoing, or preventing corruption and wrongdoing. So this law only covers central provincial government employees. It doesn't cover the employees who work in the FOI department, which is interesting and is unfortunate because there has been proof on the federal level that there have been bureaucrats, politically appointed bureaucrats, who have interfered with the FOI process, Freedom of Information process, and actually diverted documents away from people that deserve to get them. And we saw that here in a different fashion with the triple delete scandal under the BC Liberals in 2015. So I don't know why the NDP didn't include that in the act, because that's a serious offense if someone is going to prevent the release of documents for political purposes, and someone might want to blow the whistle on the inside. Those people should be protected too, and that behavior should be discouraged as well and made criminal as well. So that was also talked about in this report. This can come at a great personal sacrifice. There's a story in the report of a Service Canada employee, Sylvie Terrien, who blew the whistle, talked to a Montreal newspaper about the quotas that were placed on Service Canada employees in order to decrease the amount of employment insurance benefits that were being paid out, because there was a quota system placed. And she thought that was wrong, as it was wrong, and went public with it. She was eventually fired. She's suing for wrongful dismissal, but she went and filed personal bankruptcy. So that came as a great deal of personal hardship for her. And of course, there was Tim Duncan, the aide in the BC government, who lost his job. He blew the whistle on what was happening in the office of Transport Minister Todd Stone, where a bureaucrat appointed by Todd Stone named George Gredis was ordering Tim Duncan to triple delete email that was actually supposed to be going to an NDP MLA who made FOI requests about the Highway of Tears. Tim Duncan went through a lot of personal hardship as well through that. Eventually ended up on his feet in Alberta, but he made the brave move to write a letter to the Information Privacy Commissioner, and that went public, and she went and did the investigation and found that indeed this was happening. So, the people that are whistleblowers, we see them throughout the world. One of the most famous, of course, is Edward Snowden, who was stuck in Russia, who blew the whistle on what was happening with the National Security Administration in the United States with cybersecurity and snooping and spying on civilians. We're better understanding of the way our society works and our governments work, and sometimes private corporations, when people do take that risk. But there has to be some protection for those people, because the secrets that they might bring to the authorities could harm, cost millions and billions of dollars to those who are in power, whether it's private or public. But they could eventually save us even more in the long run. So that's why whistleblower protection is so important, and that's why the NDP went ahead and did it. They promised to do it, but again, this new report that can be found on the BC Freedom of Information and Privacy Association website does say that it is deficient in many areas.
Stats Canada was checking into people's private bank accounts and using the information to gather statistics, and they promised they would, of course, erase anything that could identify you. But how can you be confident that a government organization will do that when places like the Pentagon and large corporations routinely get hacked?
That's a good question, and that's why people should be very concerned about the StatsCan situation and write letters to their members of parliament to complain. Because as much as they can say they're going to anonymize the information, well, it's being anonymized by people, and people make mistakes. And what happens if a name is not erased? It's connected to this data about people's bank accounts, real-time bank accounts. That's why it's very concerning, because we live in a big data world right now, and a big data world, a big surveillance world. And machines are talking to machines, and people are the ones who program those machines. People are the ones that enable those machines, and people have access to those machines. And sometimes the wrong types of people have access to those machines because they want to get the information for all the wrong reasons. But when those machines start talking to each other and moving data back and forth, especially personal information, it's not a long leap of logic to look at China and understand that what's happening in China, where it is the ultimate surveillance society in the 21st century, the ultimate embodiment of Big Brother from Orwell, that could happen here if we're not diligent, and if we're not caring for our information, and if we're not putting pressure on our lawmakers to guard our information and to prevent data sharing, data matching for all the wrong reasons. This has got to be something that we've got to be very vigilant about now and going into the future.
I've heard the Conservatives plan to make this one of the major issues in the next federal election, because Prime Minister Trudeau just laughed when this was mentioned.
Well, that'll be interesting if they do, and that'll be interesting if they do win election, because, well, the public, when it comes to information and privacy, I think the public's getting very jaded, especially the media is getting very jaded, because, remember, to 2015, Justin Trudeau ran on a platform of transparency. Is going to be disclosure by default. We wouldn't have to make a lot of access to information requests anymore. The information would just be out there. There'd be open data, open information. And he dawdled and dawdled after winning the election, and gave us a watered down law, which doesn't really satisfy too many people. Oh, it's nice that we don't have to pay access to information fees anymore, beyond the $5 application fee. We don't have to pay anything beyond that anymore. But the timelines are the same. It still takes a long time to get information out of the federal government. The federal government still has a very large communications infrastructure, corporate communications infrastructure. They still do a lot of advertising, just like they did in the Harper Conservatives. Nothing has really changed very much on the information side of things. Well, when it comes to privacy, if the Conservatives get into power, would they change? Or will they do enough damage between now and the election to cause the Trudeau Liberal government to step back and rethink some of these programs? I don't know. But if they do make it a major part of their platform and a major part of the discourse going to the election, it'd be quite refreshing if we do have a very large conversation among Canadians about information and about privacy. This is something we need to do. Because governments, at the end of the day, of course, we rely on them to spend our tax money wisely, but we also rely on them to give us the information we need and want, and also keep private, and also be the regulator of private industry. So let's see what Scheer puts out there, and see where it goes on the way to October 2019.
Bob, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
My guest has been award-winning investigative reporter Bob Mackin. He's the publisher of thebreaker.news, his website, thebreaker.ca. If you have any questions for Bob or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.